All right, we are going to jump right in and talk about today's topics, which is carbohydrates, carbs. Often the center of debate, often the center of the focus on diets, high carb diets, low carb diets, or no carb diets. This phenomenon, this debate has been going on for decades. We saw the Atkins craze back in the 80s or 90s where it was, predominantly protein. We're seeing keto now where it's a majority protein with few carbs. Plant-based proponents are the total opposite, more high carb, low fat. It can be maddening. This is a very, very important topic, incredibly important, because these high fat diets are very, very dangerous. We really need to understand carbohydrates, what they are and the different types, and how incredibly important they are, which I guess is a spoiler alert as to where we come out as far as high carb versus low carb. But let's talk about it a little bit. Let's break it down to the basics, because carbs as a whole have been demonized like so many other things in health. Like the sun. The sun is the provider, the necessary ingredient for all of life, yet we've demonized that. Fruit, which has been provided by nature since the beginning of man, has also been demonized. Fruit doesn't agree with me. My doctor told me not to eat fruit. And again, there are legitimate reasons for some people. But salt is a necessary ingredient in all of our physiological symptoms, yet that causes so much high blood pressure. And the reason is because we take these reports and this research, and without really diving in and looking at, what type of salt are we talking about? What type of carbs are we talking about? What's sensible sunlight exposure versus non? What's proper fruit consumption versus not? So there's always more to it, but yet we tend to read the latest craze or the latest headline and follow the pack. We want to break down carbs for you in a way that we think makes a lot of sense and can clear up a lot of the confusion so that you can make some of your own decisions with maybe a little bit more clarity. Because again, we're here to try to simplify a lot of the confusing information that's out there. So let's start very basic. What are carbs? So carbs are the sugars, starches, and fibers that are found in fruits, whole grains, vegetables, and legumes. And a legume is anything that comes in a pod, your peas, your beans. Now, the body breaks down carbohydrates derived from these foods, preferably, and turns them into glucose, which is the simplest form of sugar, a monosaccharide. Glucose gets absorbed directly by ourselves and used for energy by the body. So incredibly important for fueling our body. The preferred fuel source and necessary fuel source for the body is glucose, which again comes from carbohydrates. So our body essentially runs on sugar in the form of this glucose. Now, why high carb? Because if an estimated 70% of the fuel we need should come from carbs, our food should be mostly high carb. That's what's running our body. Our body can not run on fat. We can avoid carbohydrates for a while so that our body can start burning the fat that we've built up, which is keto and Atkins, and start to lose that weight. That is an effective way to get rid of fat, but it's not the healthy way to maintain the body. We cannot live on these fatty proteins exclusively. It can be very damaging to our organs and is not the recipe or the prescription for a very sustainable, nourishing, healthy state of being for our bodies. We've seen that. We saw that with Atkins, and I believe we'll see it with keto as well. So let's talk about how the body processes this fuel. So it takes in carbs, right? When it has enough carbs for what it needs to propel itself and for its activity, it will store some of this glucose in the form of glycogen in our muscles to be used later. Now, the body was designed for most of the human being's existence. We didn't have supermarkets. We didn't have the abundance and the luxuries that we have now. So the body was built to store fat and energy in the form of glycogen, stored glucose, so that we could use it later. We weren't guaranteed a meal every day. It was feast or famine. That's why we have the ability to even store fat at all. Now, the excess glucose, like I said, it gets stored as glycogen to a certain degree. Above and beyond that, it gets stored as fat. Protein, the body can convert some protein into glycogen to be used as energy, but it prefers not to. Protein has its own functions and own uses in the body, but most of the body, again, runs on glucose, especially your brain. Our brains crave glucose. The heart, yeah, more fat. Protein for muscles and bones, okay, fine, yeah, but most of the body is going to run on glucose derived from carbohydrates. What about fat? There's a lot of fat in our diets these days, especially in the standard American diet, where there's a lot of meat, which has a lot of saturated fat and cholesterol, and a lot of the oils that are used in the fried foods and the processed foods, lots of fat. What happens with fat? What does the body do with fat? The body does not convert fat into usable energy in the form of glucose. It can't do it. So fat just gets stored as fat, period. If we build up too much of that, then we've got an issue. And if we want to try to shortcut things by doing some kind of keto diet or an Atkins diet where we release that, that's what people are doing. They're seeing themselves lose some pounds, some unwanted pounds, and they get all excited and they think that these diets are the greatest things on earth, but they're absolutely not. The better way to do it, in our opinion, is to start balancing the diets and shifting away from the fats and the proteins to more of the plant-based carbs. Over time, that process of eliminating fat from the cells will happen while adding nutrients and fiber to the diet. These keto and Atkins diets have very little to no fiber. We talked about how important fiber is. And eliminating waste and providing roughage and feeding good gut bacteria, all of the benefits of fiber, which, by the way, have no calories, don't get digested, but provide all of these very powerful functions in the body. We don't get any fiber in these fatty, high-protein foods, animal foods. Now, there are plenty of plant-based high-fiber foods, which we talked about, especially a lot of beans and fruits and vegetables, avocados, but we're not getting any fiber really from these concentrated processed high carbs, if we're eating those, or from the high protein animal foods. I actually call them, people refer to them as animal protein. I like to call it more animal fat because that's really what it is. It's more animal fat. So therein is how the body runs. That's scientific. That's not our opinion. That's what the body runs on. The body runs on sugar. Now, again, we talked about fat. Fat just gets stored directly in our fat cells. Now, when it comes to carbs, the argument for low carbs or high carbs, believe it or not, are both valid. What is the difference? What do we mean by that? Well, not all carbs are created equal. Not all carbs are the same. The carbs you're going to get from a raw, delicious, diverse salad versus the carbs you're going to get from a box of Ritz crackers are entirely different. One is toxic and is going to help break the body down, and the other one is going to build the body up and provide actual nutrition necessary for health and growth. Now, that is the big difference. So yeah, absolutely low carb if it's from processed foods. If it's from, whole foods, then high carb is the absolute way to go. It's what's going to get absorbed by the body more easily. It's what's going to contain all of the necessary nutrients that we need, including vitamins, minerals, and guess what? Protein and fat. There's plenty of fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds that have plenty of healthy fat and plenty of protein. We don't even need all that much protein, but certainly not as much as we've been led to believe. We'll cover that in another topic. What happens when, where do these processed carbs come from? We know where they come from. We've talked about it. They're in the bakery goods, all the sweetened beverages, the breads, the chips, the pretzels, the crackers, the candy. It's in a lot of the fruit juices that are from concentrate. These refined carbs, these refined sugars, processed, milled, they've been stripped of their water and their nutrients and importantly, their fiber. So basically what are they? They're these very calorie dense, high sugar carbs that have a very dramatic impact on our blood sugar levels. They spike what's called our glycemic index, which is the level of sugar in our blood measured over a few hours after we eat them. It spikes our blood sugar levels very high. Why is that problematic? The more sugar in our blood, the more insulin our body produces. Insulin tells the body to make and store fat, right? Insulin takes the sugar from the blood and delivers it to the cells. That's what insulin's job is. When those cells are full and can't take anymore, then that sugar stays in the blood. And guess what? Your body produces more insulin. You become insulin resistant, and then you're looking at pre-diabetic and diabetes. And that is why we really want to watch the high glycemic sugars, foods. Pretzels are higher on the glycemic index than an apple. Most fruit, except for maybe watermelon, is actually moderate on the glycemic index. But pretzels, French fries, all that stuff, way high. In addition to those processed foods having a lot of refined sugars, they also usually include a lot of fat. What do I mean by what are some examples? Let's look at French fries, pizza, potato chips, donuts, high in these low quality carbs, and they have a lot of fat. They're cooked in oil, they're fried in oil, and therein is a major, problem, a very bad combination. So yes, those carbs, avoid them like the plague. I mean, who's going to tell you that like eating, tons of donuts and pretzels and French fries is getting rid of those from your diet as much as possible is going to be incredibly healthy, and replacing it with, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, nuts, seeds, your vegetables roasted, steamed, sauteed, good healthy whole grain rices, and some of these whole grain pastas that are out there, lentil pastas, brown rice pastas, quinoa. I mean, this stuff is and there's so much you can do with these things. The smoothies, the juices, all of these things you can have fun playing around with yourself using really high integrity whole foods and enjoy just such a wide array of tastes and flavors and combinations. Is going to give you all of the nutrients you need. And again, high carb, your body runs on sugar, believe it or not. I mean, we'll talk about sugar later as its own topic, obviously, but this demonizing of carbs and no carbs and avoiding carbs like the plague is incredibly dangerous. We start to eat all the proteins that usually come with a lot of the fats, and some of them come with, so if we're eating and allowing ourselves to have the processed meats in these keto or Atkins-like diets, I mean, that's just like, we are destroying our systems from the inside out. These foods are highly, highly toxic. They come with so many different harmful ingredients, and those are just the ones that we know about. So again, carbs from whole foods, I mean, we can't say it enough. Absolutely going to give us all the energy we need, all of the protein we need, and the healthy fats. So high carb, in our opinion, all the way. You will release weight, you will lose fat by migrating more to healthy carbs, period. Again, staying away from the cookies and the junk food, which are low quality, is going to be the way to go. So the challenge is to digest all this, I guess pun intended, and think about it. Like, not all carbs are the same. In fact, they are quite different, and they can fall on the very ends of a wide spectrum of what's healthy and what's toxic, and still be called carbs appropriately. But let's be honest, and let's get it out that most of us here in America have been conditioned to eat most of our diet from processed food, and that's going to contain a lot of bad carbs. Eating good carbs, night and day. We've seen it. We've seen the level of energy and vitality of our clients go up. I've done it personally. I was a big meat eater, milk, whatever, junk food, all that crap, alcohol, soda, blah 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 blah. Shifting to good quality carbs, lowering the fat to only good high quality fats, and protein from things like I said, some whole grains and legumes and whatnot. I mean, it's that simple. That's why I can't charge you guys for any of this. I almost can't charge people for anything. It's just that simple. We do help people on a one-on-one basis to really refine their diets and find healthy alternatives and give them the education, but it's just that simple. So that's the thing with carbs. Be very careful, be very wary of these high protein, high fat diets, because they may help lose some weight in the short term, but over the long term, very much a burden to our organs and not what the body is meant to run on. Lastly, I'll leave you with this. I like to bring things back to before 120 years ago, whenever the first supermarkets came around and the whole industrialization and production of food and manufacturing of food. If you think about most of the human race, what did we eat? We ate most of what we could forage in the forest. Did we eat animals? We ate animals, but we ate the organs of the animals. That's where the blood was. That's where the nutrients were. The muscle meat didn't really have any value to us. Where we were going to get what we needed or we couldn't get from the plants, maybe because of weather or whatnot, we ate the organs, and we used the fur of the animals. We used every part of the animal to make teepees, to make garments, to make whatever. But that was the predominant, and the animals were worshipped. They were grateful for the kill. They were sustaining life and providing all these things, and there was a respect, adoration, admiration, and almost worship of the animals. It's very different these days. And again, I want you to think about that. We ate the organs. When you look at carnivores, and I know I'm getting off topic, and then I'll shut up because I'm going into other topics, but it's important. Even looking at carnivores don't eat other carnivores. They eat herbivores. And what do? You've seen it. If you've seen anything on Discovery Channel, National Geographic, or I'm dating myself, Animal Kingdom, in the safari, when a lion kills a deer or whatever, or an antelope, you see the blood all over them. They lap up the blood. The blood is where the nutrients are. Where are those animals that they're eating getting their nutrients from? Plants, and that's what they eat first. So they also have a totally different physiological digestive system than we do as humans. But that's, again, another topic. So back to carbs, just more healthy carbs, more live food, high water, high fiber. That's why we started this challenge the way we did. And a lot of things are going to keep coming up now as we go. They'll be reiterated. It's all very simple. There's 28 days, but there's not a heck of a lot of broad topics. A lot of it is just a little bit repetitive and overlapping. More clean, more live, more fresh, more raw, more packed with nutrients, as designed by nature, as best we can, as organic and healthy, and as much as we can, feel good about the quality and integrity of what we're eating, outside from growing it ourselves. There's always a trust factor. That's what our bodies deserve, and devoting ourselves and our mindset to feeding our body good things, helping it clean out so that we can have a vibrant, healthy body to enjoy life. That's what it's all about. And getting that from plant foods and these rich, glucose, nutrient-filled, starch, fiber-filled plant-based food is just the way to go. So that's it for today. The challenge, it's kind of similar to some of the other more recent challenges, crowding out the processed food, crowding out some of the meat and dairy. If we can start to, maybe phase it out and try some like healthier pastas and grains and fruits and vegetables, smoothies, let's do it. You will see a lightness and feel a lightness and a clarity and a release of weight like that'll blow your mind. Trust us, we see it all the time. It's happened to me. It's happened to people around me. It's amazing. But getting rid of those crappy carbs is job number one, and really getting out of the way. The body will do the rest. So that's it on carbs. I'm sure I forgot some stuff that I wanted to say, but these things are all done live. So anyway, any questions, comments, lob them in. If I have any afterthoughts, I'll pop them in the chat, and we'll be back tomorrow with another topic. All right, guys.